Hey,
All right,
Chipper and
thanks for
Chris,
what?
you guys would be stoked, Chipper and Chris, to know that I'm balancing my phone on a pull buoy.
Yes, we are super
Love
stoked
it.
about
Love
that
it.
fact.
On that note, let's get started, guys. My name's Aaron Pallian. Lars Finonger's on the call as well. We have the Low Tide boys, and we have John and Brent, our race director partners out of Maine on the East Coast and Washington over on the West Coast. So I just want to take a minute in the beginning here and thank everyone that's on, and I'll host it. I think I'll probably be hosting most of these, or Lars will. And our goal is every month from here on out to have a different meeting talking about a different subject matter with a different course or a different race that we have. So our goal is to keep you guys, the athletes, as informed as possible, answer questions every time we have this, and just really build a bank of information on our YouTube channel that you guys can tap back into and refer to and learn from. So that's our goal. Thanks again. And I want to go through and just kind of give a brief introduction of everybody, a bunch of us that are on the call that head up ÖDYSSEY, and then our guests, the Low Tide boys, who I don't know if you're big on everybody's screen there. You're large on mine. So my name's Aaron Pallian, and I work with Lars, Brent, and John putting on these events. Lars brought me on last year, so I'm the newest one to the group. Those other guys have been around forever, and I just want to pass it off to Lars here to kind of tell you guys the story of swim run, how that started and how it started in the US, and he can pass it off to John and Brent after that.
So yeah, thanks guys. And again, my name's Lars. I've been the race founder, the race director of the Swim Run USA, now ÖDYSSEY swim run races we're going into our 6th year. How I heard about Otillo, which was at that time the only swim run race in the world. I work on the media side of the triathlon industry, the multisport industry. And we used to always produce this triathlon guide, which listed out all the races that happened at that time. It was an annual guide that in our print magazine of Inside Triathlon. And one of the sections was the hardest races. And so we would always sniff out 4 or 6 events. And Otillo was always one of those that we wrote about. And so at that time, it was kind of this special operations military type race where only a few kind of crazies did it. But it always was a bit interesting to me. Fast forward 10 years, and I had done triathlon for quite a while, and I was interested in finding this kind of the next thing above and beyond triathlon. And so it was 2014, I went to Stockholm, Sweden, and participated in this Otillo race out of the Stockholm archipelago. And it's 26 or 27 islands of basically island hopping in the Stockholm archipelago. And right then and there, throughout the day, it was a long day, 10 plus hours. It was just unlike anything I had ever experienced in triathlon or cycling. Freezing cold the entire day. It was in the Baltic Sea and tethered together with this teammate who I had never met before. And I just remember it being this incredible experience. And so as I was back in Stockholm on the mainland, resting for my flight the next day back home, I got an email from Jeff Cole, a gentleman out of Kennebunk, Maine, which I had known him forever in the triathlon industry. And he said, "Oh my gosh, you got to check out this race that happened in Sweden. It's called," he would say, "Ertiller. And we got to do one of these in Portland, Maine." And I said, "Jeff, you'll never believe I'm laying in a hotel room having just done that race." And so right then and there, we hatched this idea to do the Casco Bay Island swim run outside of Portland, Maine. And fast forward a couple of years, and Jeff Cole unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. And so due to COVID, we missed our 5th annual running at the Casco Bay Islands. So we'll have our 5th Casco Bay Islands this year. But the sport of swim run has essentially been in the US now for 6 years. With this, its 6th year. And for a while there was just a couple of races. I think last year there went from maybe a dozen or so races down to, I think we only had 2 events, maybe 3 events in the US, between Otillo, Catalina, our Odyssey, Texas race at the end of the year. And I think there was maybe one other race in North Carolina that happened somewhere in the middle. But 3 races last year, obviously we all know why. I think we just are really hoping that 2021 is a breakout year, that we can continue to produce races in a safe way. And I think Aaron will speak to that a little bit later, how we do that. But, more than anything, swim run, at least here in the US, but I think I speak for the Swedes who founded the sport, that swim run is really just a connection with humans, a team of 2, or in our case, we've added a solo category, but it's the connection of humans with nature. And it's a very simplistic sport. We do tend to complicate things as gear junkies and what have you, but it's meant to be a very simplistic sport. And, you find yourself in some pretty precarious situations sometimes, whether it's in the water, facing shifting tides or changing currents, scrambling up rocks. It's not an easy sport by any means, but I don't think anyone who signs up to participate in swim run is looking for an easy cookie cutter PR. Think of synonyms that are with those words. They're not looking for that experience when they come to swim run. And so, if you have a bloody knee, or if you have scraped up elbows, or, it's just part of the game here. And, don't look for sympathy points from us as the race directors, but, we're just all out there to help each other get to the finish line, to get through the race course, to give, high fives or virtual high fives, and just have a great time. So that's what our Odyssey team, what we're looking to accomplish with each of these races is just to show you unique areas of the country and unique courses. And, I'll let the guys take it from there.
Do you want to talk just for a second, Lars, about how you met John and how you met Brent and how they became part of what they're doing now as co-race directors at those different locations?
Yeah, absolutely. So I met John in kind of a funny context. So the first year of Casco Bay Islands, it was again, cold water, tough currents, tides. We had never put on a race before, a swim run race before. So we had a lot of criteria that we wanted to make sure that these athletes who participated were hardy athletes who had a resume of endurance sports. And so the typical athlete who was signing up, they had to, produce a time that showed they were a good swimmer, which meant, whether it was a half Ironman swim or an Ironman swim. We had a lot of people who came from the adventure racing world and such. And so Jeff received this application from this team out of Maine, and this guy claimed, hey, this race is a cookie cutter for me and my partner. And in fact, I don't mean to, toot my own horn, but I think we'll probably win your race. And I laugh about it now because he's the humblest guy, but it was John and his teammate Matt. And I remember us blasting off the ferry horn to start our first race. And in my mind, I had these 2 athletes who I thought were going to win the race. But these 2 guys just took off from the foghorn, and they were gone. And by the end of the first swim, which I think was only 700 yards or so, they were already 2 minutes ahead and of the second place team. And they just continued to build up this lead as the race course went on. And so lo and behold, that was John Stevens and Matt Hurley, who have gone on to win the Casco Bay race 4 times, and they won our very difficult Orcas Island course 1 time, beating Lance Armstrong and Simon Whitfield and another pro triathlon group. So, John, not only does he have the paunches as an athlete, but the guy is he's always the first one out there, always the last one off the course, helping to set up and tear down the course. He's really he grew up on the islands in Casco Bay. And so he's, driving boats around all year round to make the connections with the locals. He's just totally invaluable for us. If you notice the Ludington pictures, which, we haven't produced a race there yet, this will be our first year, but John's the model in all of those Ludington videos. He actually went and ran and swam that course, so that we knew it was a good course setup and had good flow. Brent, Jeff and I circled a couple places on the map where we thought we wanted to plant the early Odyssey Swim Run USA flags to hold races. And one of those big circles that we drew was around the San Juan Islands. And because we were going to put on a race, or we had successfully put on a race in the Casco Bay Islands, so let's do the same in the San Juan Islands. It didn't look too far to swim between the islands, some good running distance. So somehow we came up, we got Brent's connection. He was out in Bellingham, Washington, and we called him up and we said, "Hey, Brent, here's our idea. Can you help us out?" And Brent said, "Well, you know what? How did you come up with this course?" We said, "Well, Google Earth did a great job of, showing us the distances and such." And he said, "Yeah, if you can swim between these islands, then you are a brave person, because there are very large mammals that also swim in there, and killer whales. And you will deal with water temperatures that are probably mostly 48 to 50 degrees at the highest. And you're going to deal with some of the rippingest currents you've ever experienced in your life out of the Straits of Juan de Fuca and such." And so very quickly we were put in our place, and we learned that we were very ignorant, and you shouldn't plan races only through Google Earth. And anyways, Brent came into the fold. He put together a masterful race, which takes place on Orcas Island, and he heads up our Pacific Northwest branch. And Brent comes from an adventure racing background, and so literally there's nothing this guy cannot do, whether it's a kayak or running, or he's our team mountain goat. The runs up Mount Constitution, we got to throw a tow rope and hold on to Brent. He's going so fast. And Brent actually did his first swim run at the Otillo race in Catalina, half of the race without goggles, which was a story that the Low Tide Boys told. And so you got to check out that podcast sometime. But that's how I met those guys. And then Aaron's a world-class race producer. I live in Houston, Texas, and Aaron owned and produced all of the Houston triathlon races for years. And he also produces the Alaska Man Extreme, the Aloha Man Extreme out of Hawaii, and the Iceland Extreme on Iceland. And having done his races before, he's in my opinion the best out there, and I'll put him up against Ironman race producers and really anyone. And Aaron agreed to come on board initially as our photographer, and his photos are just incredible, both of the racers, but then also the landscape. And anything you see that looks like it's had a nice marketing touch to the race, John, Brent, and myself cannot take any credit for that. That is all Aaron. So I hope that wasn't too long, but that's our team. And these guys are just, they're rock stars.
Thanks, Lars. Appreciate that. So I want to just transition into letting Brent and John talk, mainly where they're stationed out of, and just introduce themselves to the crowd here and go from there. So Brent, do you want to go first?
All right. Can you hear me? All right. Thanks for the introduction, Lars. As Lars mentioned, I'm up in Bellingham, Washington, kind of the far northwest corner of the country. We're about 20 miles from the Canadian border, and the San Juan Islands are kind of our back door. And yeah, I got a call from Lars and Jeff, and they said, "Hey, what do you think about this idea?" And I said, "Well, let's maybe adjust that a little bit." And that's kind of how the Orcas Island race was born. I've spent a lot of time out in the islands, and know it's an incredible place. And as Lars mentioned, I come from an adventure racing background. I'm an adult onset swimmer, so my swimming is a bit subpar. A little tip there: if you need help, just hook into a tow line with either Lars or John, and life's way better in the swimming categories. But we started looking at Orcas, and I knew that area really well from putting on some adventure races out there, and we came up with the Orcas swim run course and have had 2 years of that thus far, when this will be our third year coming up. It's a very different race than Casco Bay that John will talk about here in a second. It is more definitely more trail running based. The swims are less technical than the Casco Bay swims, but the trail running is much more technical, and there is a huge amount of vertical. So if you're coming out to do Orcas, start training for the hills now.
Thanks, Brent. John, you still with us?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, John. Yeah, take it away. Tell us a little bit about where you're at and what you're all about, man.
Yeah, well, Brent's upper left, I'm upper right. I am based in Portland, Maine, and actually spend a good portion of the year out on Little Diamond Island, which is right on the Casco Bay course. And I guess I'll start by saying, getting into swim run, I got into it, or first heard about it. There was probably around the same time Lars went and raced that first race in Sweden that he did in 2014. Outside Magazine did an article, and I remember reading that article and thinking, oh shit, this would be perfect for Portland, Maine. And I emailed my brother, and we went back and forth like, oh, we should totally do a race here. And then we just didn't talk about it for 2 years. And then sitting in bed one night, all of a sudden this Slow Twitch article pops up from Lars about this Casco Bay swim run race. And as someone that was newly into triathlon with a swimming background and a running background, the idea of doing a race with no bike was awesome. So we jumped all over that and instantly got in touch with Matt Hurley, who I had only met a couple of weeks before that, and we teamed up and got into the race. And then fast forward a few years, and the following the untimely death of Jeff, Lars kind of reached out and said, you're on the course, you're in Maine, I'm in Texas, would you be interested in helping us out this year, setting up and just kind of, can we use you and your boat? And I said, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And went out and helped Lars and the team that he had at the time kind of get that course set up and ready. And I fell in love with swim run. That first race, that horn went off, we blasted away, loved it right from the get-go, just probably like everybody else in here. But then going out and setting that course and being part of the race weekend and tearing it down, setting it up and planning, being out there and thinking, where are we going to take this race and this course? Fell in love with that part of it even more. So the idea of going out and setting these courses and setting it up is just awesome. And the Casco Bay course is my backyard. I grew up swimming there, grew up running there, knew all these islands like the back of my hand. So getting out and exploring them and planning a course through these is a lot of fun. And if anyone's ever done Casco Bay more than once, that Casco Bay is never the same course twice. So the fun part is thinking, how are we going to switch this up? Where can we start? Where can we finish? And sometimes the Coast Guard forces us in one direction. Sometimes it forces us in another. But here we are in 2021. We had a a different course plan for 2020, and that's what's going to kind of move forward for 2021 here. And again, it's going to be a little different. It's going to follow a different flow, a couple new additions, new finish line, but basically the opportunity to mix it up, but it'll still keep those core Casco Bay things with the big swims, a lot of currents, a lot of seaweed for any of you that have lost a paddle trying to get out of a swim exit on the Casco Bay course. You know, we're always trying to throw in a dock jump or two if we can. And, you know, it's one of those where you're going to be battling the tide, you're going to be battling the currents. If you're really fast, you might have one section that's a swim and the other people might have that as a run because it'll be a sandbar. But that's kind of the beauty of the course is it's ever changing and ever evolving and you just don't know what you're going to get on the day. And it's definitely a swim heavy and swimmers course. That said, it's certainly achievable for anybody else. While we don't have quite the technical trails that you might get on Orcas or even in Texas, you know, the opportunity to run on these rocks and island hop, and it's kind of that true Otillo origin story where it's island to island, and you're starting here and you're finishing over there, and you just got to make your way through it. And you know, it's one of those races that's kind of truly unique, and hopefully we'll kind of bring that to you again this year.
Thanks, John. Just me for a minute here. I guess my name is Aaron Pallian. Lars already said a bunch about me. I don't know. I mean, I lived in Houston for a decade. I grew up in Michigan, moved back here. While I was in Houston, for that decade, I put on large scale triathlon events and just kind of grew sick of it and transitioned into extreme tri after doing Norseman and Keltman and falling in love with that side of the sport. And then, you know, like Lars said, photographing those swim runs for him. And then unfortunately with Jeff's passing, you know, there was an opening there to help. There was a void that will likely never be filled at all. But someone needed to step in and help and do what they could there. So I kind of took over the logistics part of it. That's what Lars needed the most, I think, as far as answering emails and website creative side of it. So that's kind of my niche and what I do. And I really love the sports like swim run that are laid back, trail running, the extreme tries to a certain degree as well. Just the fact that it's lower registration numbers, you can get to know the athletes. That was really big with me because the larger events, and I think all the guys agree with this, the large events that even once they get 750, 1,000 or higher, you don't really know the people. It's just so big that you can't talk to them. You can't take the time with an email to actually write it back. You're giving generic responses, things like that. So it's really important to us. I know all of us, I speak for everyone when I say that we really want that personal touch with this. We want to be able to get to know you guys. There's a number of the people that register for these races that do every race of ours or multiple races a year, and we know them by name, and that's great for us. So I'm super excited to be part of this, and I love it. Hope it continues for a long, long time. So with that being said, I'd love to pass it off to our special guests who are the Low Tide Boys. They can tell you who they are, their names, and what their podcast is all about.
Hey, Aaron, I'm going to jump in and make a little bit more of an introduction to these guys.
I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. I should have passed that to Lars. He's absolutely right.
So first of all, I remember the first time I saw Chipper's name on a starting list because I'm a big baseball fan, or used to be a big baseball fan. And Chipper Jones was one of the greatest baseball players there was during the time when we were growing up. So I thought, holy cow, this guy has a great name. Chipper Nicodemus, what a name. And yeah, and you know, as I do with a lot of the athletes on our starting line, my dad is the announcer, so we try to find a little bit of their story. And I saw that he produced podcasts, not about swim run at that time. And then Chris Douglas, I also noticed that he was also in the sporting industry, working with a lot of running events, especially on the trail running side.
He's also
and so back up, really, I think at the start of last February, around the Otillo Catalina time, these guys launched this swim run podcast. And if you want any information about the sport, both in an in-depth nature from what really is the peak of the sport, the athletes from Sweden, what the Europeans are doing. Chipper and Chris provide that direct line of really reaching out to the best of the best in this sport. And what they've been doing truly has been like an encyclopedia of knowledge. So guys, with that, please go ahead.
Wow. Thank you, Lars.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
very kind. Aaron, thank you for yours as well. Yeah, so I'm Chip and this is Chris, and we're the Low Tide Boys. We are a swim run team out of Northern California and Novato, California specifically. We've been doing swim runs since 2018, and I'm pretty sure we saw that same Slow Twitch article about Casco Bay.
Yep.
Chris had signed up.
Yeah, actually, I learned about swim run earlier, and then I'd signed up for the original Casco Bay, but was injured, so ended up not doing that, and then having a kid, and then asking Chipper. So 2018 is our date.
So then we partnered up, and in 2018 did the California Swim Run Andy Hewitt's race down there in San Diego area, then did Casco Bay, the Odyssey race. 2019 we were raising families, and yeah, as Lars mentioned, and as we do more and more swim runs, and we were telling our friends about it, and they kept asking us all these questions like, well, what do you do with the gear, or how does the tether work, or how do you train, that kind of stuff. And we said we should just make like a couple episodes of a podcast and put it out there and see what happens. And it was just totally embraced by the community, and we have been loving it. But yeah, we're super happy to be partnered with Odyssey this year, providing course previews, racing the races. We raced Austin, Texas, such a great time. And yeah, our goal is to get out there and race as much as we can this year and have a ton of fun and meet a lot of people too.
Yeah. What he said.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, we're going to be doing more with these guys all year long, and they're a blast if you see them out on the course. And I know it was great to see you guys in Austin, the one race we could have this year, actually. So that was great. I want to just kind of transition into mentioning our races this year. We have 5 of them. I think that's it, guys, for the season. As far as we're locked in, we're not adding more this year or anything like that. But our first race is Casco Bay, as it's always been, August 8th. And on the 29th is Mackinac. We just unveiled that race. I'm really excited about that. And something I didn't mention is that I'm more of the point of contact for the Michigan races up here. So Mackinac Island and Ludington, which is later in the year on October 3rd, they are both races that are near and dear to my heart. They're places that I grew up visiting. Ludington's amazing, and Mackinac Island's a staple in the Midwest, no matter where you're from, all over the country. Orcas Island, September 26th, and Pace Bend Park is November 7th. So all the races are pretty much where they've been on the calendar, with the exception of Ludington. Ludington's truly a new race added in a spot that nothing was in October. And for those of you that knew that we had Les Chenaux, that race, unfortunately, at least as of now, is not happening anymore. And it was directly replaced with Mackinac on the same day. So yeah, like I said, Ludington's the only one to fill a new void on the calendar. And that is our schedule for the year. I wanted to talk a little bit about each race. Now we're going to get into more of a detailed talk about the races in general, each race in general on their own meeting, and talk about courses and things like that. But just kind of a brief overview, and the guys did a little bit of that, but just maybe a little bit more. If John, if you want to jump in and just talk about Casco Bay a little bit, tell them, what to expect, what's new for this year, and just go over the race a little bit if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lars, feel free to hop in here if I miss anything. So, Casco Bay, as I said earlier, is different every year. And this year is no exception. And if you've also known Casco Bay, then you also know that we'll tell you what the course is a few months ahead of time, and then we'll really tell you what the course is the day before. It tends to get a little switched up, but that's part of Lars and I having a really good time, and Brent too, when he comes up for that race, setting courses, we stop and go, oh, wait, what's that trail over there? Let's go check that out. And this year is probably going to be no exception. I think one of the highlights of this year is going to be, we're going to add some more trail running, and we're going to do that on Chebeague Island. And in the past, we have started on Chebeague. We have run through Chebeague to finish on Long. But this year, we are actually going to finish on Chebeague, and we're going to add some more trail running onto that back half of that race up in that area. So that'll be kind of the big addition to that. I think we will also kind of continue the route where 2 years ago, I guess now, we went across Cow Island as opposed to swimming across the Husky Sound. We kind of keep it a little bit more inside. And Cow Island is this really cool island in that it's a summer camp of sorts. And they kind of have their own little tiny community out there, but it's really cool to run through and see they've got gardens growing, they've got yurts up, and they've built all of this inside of an old Civil War fort. And then that will be the big swim from Cow Island to Long Island, or not the big swim, one of the big swims. But we'll include, the staples that we have before, which is House Island and running through that fort. And we'll include Vale Island on the backside of Long Island, where you're just scrambling around all those rocks and across all of that. And those things will remain, but we will add in that a few more trails on Chebeague, which I think will be a kind of a nice big addition. And then we will finish on Chebeague. And if you remember in the past, 2 years ago, if anyone did that race, we ran on a beach on Chebeague on the backside and kind of went through a boatyard. And this year we're actually going to be able to finish at that boatyard, which is going to be great because I think we'll be able to get the Casco Bay lines in there, which is the ferry service to kind of shuttle people in and out. They've got a great setup where we can be outside, we can spread across the beach. They've got the parking lot. They've got a storage facility that they use for their boats in the winter, but in the summer they can open up all the doors on it, but it's covered. So if the weather's kind of not great, at least we have a place where air is moving through and we're covered on that side of it. So that'll be kind of the big changes or additions to that Casco Bay race. And Lars, did I miss anything on that? I don't think so.
No, I think you've hit it on the head. And, like John said, that is definitely a course where we work hand in hand with the island communities and with the Coast Guard and the harbor masters. The course has been known to change from what we have it listed on the site. And so, it's swim run's a unique sport in that, you're really not going to be able to go onto these courses and train on them before race day. We utilize so much private property that A, for safety's sake, you probably shouldn't, and B, just out of respect for the landowners, you also shouldn't. But so with that said, we do change the courses on some of these routes that do utilize private property. And so don't be surprised, especially Casco Bay, if the course does change, if the distances are not, totally on par. And I think Chipper and Chris have a great story, about their experience on Casco Bay's course. And oftentimes the love-hate relationship with us as race directors. Everyone hates Brent on race day because the Orcas course is so hard. But they always end up giving him a hug at the end of the day. So I think it all evens out. But no, John, I think you hit it all.
Yeah, and you made a good point there too. And it's the idea too is, living here, I know what this is like, but it's, and I see Sarah on the call, she knows what this is like too, is this the idea that the islands that we go across, each island is its own community, and they're very tight and they're very close. And it's a lot of effort for us going across 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 islands. And it's essentially 8 different worlds, 8 different communities that are very tight. So we do have to work with them and also, appease them into what they are, they're allowing us to do this, and they're really doing us a favor by allowing us to come across their property and their lands and run through their woods and their trails with all these people. So, at the end of the day, we are kind of at the whim of what they will allow us to do. And we try to be as respectful as we can. And that's kind of the nice thing as swim run too, is pack in, pack out, whatever you start with, you finish with. And, I've done races where you're kind of going across it and you're picking up other people's trash and you don't feel bad about it because you're hoping it was an accident. But that's kind of the case with all of our courses, is we are working within the environment that we have. And they are gracious enough to allow us to come across this, and we are hopefully gracious enough to leave it better than we found it.
Thanks, John. Keeping this in order, just going through each of the 5 races real quick, move to Mackinac. Mackinac Islands happens just a little bit after Casco Bay at the end of August. And just briefly on that, if you haven't seen already and read a little bit about it, it's northeast of the bridge, the Mighty Mac, and it connects the lower and upper peninsulas of Michigan. And it's in Lake Huron, and the water's great, fresh water, somewhat shallow swimming on that course. The island itself actually has a surprising amount of elevation gain throughout it. I think the whole course, it's not a ton, but it's 1,600, and you wouldn't expect that in Michigan. So the course is challenging in its own regard, but also beautiful. It's one of the best vacation destinations you could go to, especially if you have a family. So if you're looking for somewhere really cool and unique that you've never been with the family, I highly recommend it. There's no cars or motorized vehicles on the island. You park, you take a ferry over, there's horses, there's bikes, renting thousands and thousands of bicycles there that you can rent from. What's really cool about it is if you do Mackinac, your family or whoever's coming there, hopefully with you to support you, they can actually rent a bike and or run the ring road, which is about 8 miles around the island. And they can check out anytime you come off the inner part of the island to go do the swim, because the swims are on the outside. They can cheer you on. So it's really unique in that way that they can see you at multiple points throughout this race. And it's awesome. So that's about as detailed as I'll get with that. And I'll pass that on to Brent next with Orcas.
All right, thanks, Aaron. So Orcas, the biggest change that we're having for this year is we're going to change where we start and finish. The last couple of years, we've based out of the Environmental Learning Center, which is in the state park. We are actually going to move the start finish down to Rosario Resort, which is down at the bay, so at sea level. So that means it's all uphill from there, and then all downhill to finish. That's probably the biggest change for the course for this year. There's still going to be all the vertical. There's going to be lots and lots of single track. It's over 6,000 vertical feet. So, Aaron, 1,600, it ain't that big a deal. Knock
it off. We don't live in the mountains over here. It's better than when I was in Texas and we had like 10 feet of gain.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, it's almost exclusively single track. So be ready for lots of vert and lots of running through beautiful woods with some stunning views, and swimming through beautiful mountain lakes. There'll be one swim down in salt water that'll give you an idea why we don't do any more swims in the salt water. But the lakes are gorgeous, nice and clear, and we got a nice little cliff jump in there for those who are interested.
Awesome. Thank you. And so the next race, back to me for Ludington in Michigan. Yeah, we have 2 races in Michigan. But if you've been to the state, then you know that, from the West Coast to the East Coast and the Upper Peninsula, all of it, it's completely different. And that's why I thought that developing 2 races here, the state could support it in the Midwest area. And John, if you want to unmute yourself just to make a few comments, John did the run through of the race last year with us at Ludington. And I believe that was mid to late September when we did that. So the weather was similar to what it'll be in the beginning of October. After the first week in October, it starts to fall off pretty quick. Originally, this race was going to be in May, but we heard your concerns with the water temperature. And while we might have been able to pull that off and escape alive out of there, it'll be much more tolerable in October because it's cooling down at that point. But mid-October to late October is when it really drops off quick. So odds are the race will have colder air than water, at least at the start. And that race specifically, that area, personally, it's my favorite in all of Michigan. They've got one of the best campgrounds. So if you guys like camping, that's another great one. The Michigan races are just great for family in general. I mean, they all are, but the campground at Ludington is like none that I've ever been to. It's amazing. It's right on the shoreline, very nice facilities. And they have multiple campgrounds that you can pull up and park in, some that you can hike into just shortly off the shoreline. It's white sand beaches. We start downtown, and the city of Ludington is this quaint, awesome shopping, restaurants, lots of really cool stuff there. And it's right next to the shoreline. There's lighthouses everywhere. We start there, and then we make our way into the state park. And the state park has more sand dunes than you'll probably care to run on by the end of it. But We have at least 2 sand dune climbs. I'm looking now at adding, and we'll get into this with the course, but I have to mention it. I'm looking now at adding, I found a ridge of sand dunes that we might be able to run in a trail that you run across. So making that just a little bit harder, and that would eliminate a road section. So that's always good. But the sand dunes are brutal. John, speak a little bit to that real quick.
Yeah, sand dunes are brutal. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, if anyone's running sand before, you know that, and now try running straight uphill on sand. And then try to go preview this course with Aaron taking pictures of you running up sand and saying, do it again, do it again, do it again. Not great. No, the course is awesome, you know, and it's great because, as he said, you start in this little downtown, you run right through the middle of this downtown, right towards this great, you know, kind of picturesque lighthouse, and then you're into Lake Michigan. And that time of year, we were there right about the same time. That'll be the coldest swim of the day for sure, but you get it done, you get it out of the way, and then you're kind of running off to the state park. And then from there, it's a lot of these little inland lakes, which are great, and it's trails. There's some wooden, what would you call it, Aaron? A boardwalk, I guess? I don't know. Wooden stairs.
Yeah, it's one of the most unique features of the race, actually, is there's all these like wooden boardwalk areas that connect the trails through these the sequence of islands. So, you know, I want to get more into that, obviously, and we have the map up and all that stuff. And John, definitely you're going to be on that call. But it's just really unique. You're running through little bog areas that have really clean, clear water. And the ending with the lighthouse, or towards the end, the Big Sable Lighthouse out there is just absolutely incredible. So, I really hope that you guys join us for that race if you're not already signed up. And going to the last race, if Lars, are you still around? Do you want to talk about Austin real quick before we move on? I think he may have left us.
No, Aaron, you
there we go.
you missed my text, which said I'm about to start driving.
Oh, okay.
No, why don't you know what? Chipper and Chris, can you guys speak to Austin? You guys know all about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Austin is the last race of the year. It's in Pace Bend Park. It's about 45 minutes north of the city of Austin, but you're still within the city limits because Texas is huge like that. And it's a pretty unique swim run course. So you're running through high mountain desert, hill country kind of terrain, a lot of rocks. You're swimming in the Colorado River, which was very pleasant, even though it could have gone the other way. And yeah, it's a really unique course. I mean, we haven't done that many swim runs, but we definitely haven't done one like Austin, just in the terrain and what it gave you.
Yeah, we really, really had a great time there. Cool little community campground area. Really was great again for finish festivities, even in COVID times. And yeah, really a really good race where we felt like if you want to come out and you want to race really hard, Austin's a great one for that. You can really push yourself hard on some of those trails if you can handle the technical trails and some of those Colorado River swims.
Yeah, and I would also say, so one good thing about that race is you really get both sides. So if you want to go really hard and just go red line the whole time, it's a race that's conducive to that. But also if this is your first swim run and, Orcas just seems like a little bit too much, or Casco, seems too much, and you just want to kind of dip your toe in it, this was a great race for beginners. I mean, the water was very non-technical.
Non-issue, yeah.
You're close to shoreline the whole time. You don't have to worry about wildlife or whatever if that's an issue for you. And it's a great race to really just explore the sport and kind of fall in love with it.
It can only take 1 or 2 transitions and you're hooked.
Well, and that kind of transitions into something I was going to say too, is that you guys mentioned beginners, and I think this year, based on what I'm seeing on the registration list, we have quite a few beginners trying it for the first time, which is great for us, great for the sport, great for everybody. That being said, remember that we have short course, we have long course to choose from. You can do teams, you can do solo. And then when we're designing our courses, especially the newer ones like Austin and the 2 Michigan races, Lars and I really put some thought into what can we have that's challenging, that obviously the faster you race is more challenging for you, right? But that is still something that doesn't scare off beginners. And some beginners, obviously, they don't care. They'll go right into Orcas or any of them, and they're fine. But some people, they're a little intimidated intimidated by it. Who knows what it is, coming from triathlon or whatever they're doing. And so we want to have races that are also very welcoming from a beginner standpoint. And so we think we have a very balanced schedule with that. And on the map and the races that we've chosen. So, but keeping it with you guys, I wanted to roll that into, tell people more about you guys, what your goals are for the year, podcasts you got coming up. Just, this is your time.
Yeah.
Tell us everything you got.
Cool. So we, on the Low Tide Boys, on the podcast front, we drop an episode every single week. We also have a secondary show because we can't get enough. Called Gear Talk, which is actually co-hosted by two wonderful ladies, the Swimrun Labs, Annie and Brooke, who one of them knows Brent pretty well. And we just go over gear reviews, talk about what's the newest pull buoys, what's the shoes, what do you need to consider when choosing a wetsuit, all the gear stuff. We have a whole show for gear. And then on the Low Tide Boys podcast, we're doing interviews with athletes. We've interviewed every race director on this call. We've interviewed founders of brands. We've something that we really enjoy doing is producing these course preview episodes. So we give you a leg by leg breakdown. We did one for Odyssey Swim Run Austin, and we'll be supporting in that same manner for every Odyssey race this year. So we'll get athletes who have done the course. You'll hear from Lars and get the race director's points. So really trying to hit it from every area. But those are some of our favorite ones coming out this year. As far as episodes coming out soon, we have an episode dropping with some content from Australia. Or wait, where?
Yeah.
Australia. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the show, we frankly don't have it figured out that far ahead. So we have a couple guests, and then we just kind of like pull something out of our hat or whatever. We really love the sport, and I think people have already told us that they think we're sort of swim run evangelists at this point. And I'll wear that hat, or whatever evangelists wear. And I think, what we're really trying to do, we really think the sport's amazing. We love the community. We love everything about it. And with the show, we just kind of want to share that with people. And that means, interviewing the person who came up with the name Swim Run. That means interviewing the guy who makes the videos for Atala that are, that we've all watched at like 2 a.m, right? And I think we're just, we keep trying to find new ways to highlight the sport in a different way, and support the people that are, part of this big circus tent. I mean, we've said this before when we started the podcast. It's like there's this tent, right? And it's all the swim run people in the tent, and we just kind of crashed into the tent one day with memes and started this podcast. And people were like, "Who the hell?" Like people are literally like, "Who the hell are these guys?" And the tent was big enough for us too. So we've been embraced, and we really love meeting everyone and trying to give people advice. And we get questions every week of what shoe should I wear, what wetsuit should I try, and we just love being able to help people that way, and going to try to keep doing it.
Yeah, and speaking on what you guys are saying there about the sport and how great it is, the people, the people you meet in endurance sports are nice, they're kind, caring, but it's gotten progressively better over the years, at least for me, going to extreme tries and then now into swim run. I've never met a group of people that are nicer. And for the newbies out there, the people that have never done one or haven't signed up for one yet, but are tuning in to listen to us to see what it's all about, that should not be intimidating to you at all. That side of it is so welcome, and you can ask anybody any questions. If you email us, I'm the guy answering that. So be nice, first of all. But yeah, I was shocked when Lars brought me in originally as a photographer for this, the landscapes I was able to get. If you guys want to travel, if you're listening and you want to travel, and you can drive out to these, I drive cross country to these things just to see more of this country. But the landscapes that you're going to see are like nothing that you're going to see at bigger races, because the bigger races just can't get into the areas that swim run can. And that's a huge thing. You're going to see things you haven't seen before. You're going to meet people you never imagined that you'd meet. So we welcome you with open arms and really hope you'll join us. I wanted to, on that, thank you guys. I wanted to just mention a few things here real quick, some updates that I recently made to the site. We've been getting a lot of questions about various things, but in that regard, they end up usually being the same 12 to 20 questions throughout the time. So I took the time to update the frequently asked questions and rules on the website. So if you're listening, just everyone involved, take a look at that. It answers any questions you have, rules, mandatory gear, all that stuff. So really proud of the work that went into that, and it's super comprehensive. Our Facebook groups, we also wanted to mention, is a good place for resources and just talking to other athletes, starting to train with them, and just finding people with common interests that live near you. So check out our Facebook groups, guys. Just if you search ÖDYSSEY on Facebook, there's a million groups that pop up. They're all ours. There's one for each race, and then obviously our page too as well. And before we open it up to questions, I wanted to mention that tomorrow, our biggest sponsor, Arc Swim Run, their wetsuits, they have a wetsuit going on sale from the 5th through the 10th, and it's half off. For any of you that don't really have a swim run wetsuit, yeah, exactly. And you haven't had a chance to get one, you need a new one, whatever it is, we're going to post that to our Facebook page. We did it today, and I thought it was the 5th. That's when I posted it. So that got deleted, and we're going to repost that tomorrow. So that should be on their website. It should be marked down already. There's no code or anything that we know of, at least. And check that out. It's a great deal to get in on it. We do rent their wetsuits at our races. So if you don't even want to buy one at half off, or they run out, I don't know, then you can definitely rent those with us, and we'll unveil that program. Last year, it was kind of off the cuff a little bit, last minute, but we may open up that rental on our store ahead of time and try and organize that just a little bit more. So that's something for those of you that want to get into it, but not necessarily want to spend that money up front quite yet. So with that, anybody that's a co-host with me, and any of you guys want to say anything before we open it to maybe a half a dozen questions? We're at about an hour and 5, so we don't want it to go too long, but anyone else want to say anything?
I would just suggest, if we take questions, maybe taking them in the chat, as opposed to people just trying to speak over each other.
And we'll take this opportunity to plug a couple things that we've done that are good for beginners. We have swim run gear overview guides on YouTube, should kind of give you a brief overview of the equipment. We have budget stuff, so get a whole swim run set up for under $200. We have cheap, and you want to ball out, we got the ball out version for you too. So anything you want, you're looking for new shoes or whatever, we have it on the website, lowtideboys.com. And then a lot of it's kind of cross-posted over to ÖDYSSEY as well. And we're happy to share, email, all that good stuff. Like Aaron said, we're more than happy. You just slide into the DMs and we'll take care of you.
They're just looking at some of these questions you guys have posted. To my best knowledge, there's no whales or sharks in Michigan now. So you don't have to worry about that. That's why we wanted to offer some freshwater swimming. But let's see.
Maybe I'll speak to the elephant in the room about Casco Bay, which is the shark that was in Casco Bay last year, and say that, I know locally we've had people who are nervous about it, and it was one of those things. We did have a shark attack north of where our race is, not super close, but the area. And I think it's this idea where for people in Maine, it's super freaky and it gets people scared. A few weeks past, everyone's back in the water swimming. It's no big deal. The low tide boys can speak to swimming in shark infested waters, and it's part of, if you're swimming in open water and it's in the ocean, there's something big underneath you that it could eat you no matter where you are. And so the thought that it can come get you,
don't eat you. That's the secret. They actually don't want to eat you. It's an accident when they do. So
yes, exactly.
I don't know that makes anyone feel better though,
we all did not all. A lot of us did Catalina last year, and the idea is there's going to be a lot of people in the water. There's going to be a lot of boats around, and a shark is not going to be interested in any of that.
Well,
Chris, you got to be the lead swimmer, man.
Nope, that's Chipper's job. So John, there was a question in the chat about like where can you learn more about the currents or to understand that. I know when we did Orcas, I mean when we did Casco Bay in 2018, I had already been doing a lot of swimming in Aquatic Park and in San Francisco Bay and kind of knew those currents, and I was just kicking myself for not having studied them when we were crossing the Portland Sound and stuff like that. Is there a place you think that's a good resource for folks?
You know, the biggest thing, I think the biggest resource is learning how to understand what the tide is doing while you're swimming in it and get an idea of the tide. And you know, it's one of those things where we can post, what is the tide going to be? And we talk about this in the pre-race briefing a lot, saying we're going to start at this time, that's dead low tide. That means when you're doing these swims, the tide is going to be coming in and how that's going to be pushing you. So one of the things you could do is look at a map, look at a chart and see what direction, you know where open ocean is, you know where not open ocean is. And it's this idea that, you know, if the tide's coming in, it's gonna be pushing you in. If the tide's going out, it's gonna be sweeping you out. And so understanding that concept, but also while you're swimming, taking a second and looking, it's Casco Bay. There's lots of lobster buoys everywhere. We're Maine, right? So that's what you're gonna see. So look at that lobster buoy and see how the current is hitting it and how it's pushing it. And if it's pushing it that way, then that means it's going to be pushing you that way as well. And you have to overcompensate for that current and for that push. So, you know, it's one of those, whereas if you're swimming in a lake, let's say on like Orcas or in Ludington, you see the other side, you aim for the other side, you can make a straight shot. You know, if you're in Casco Bay and you're shooting for that island, you know you have to get out here, but the tide is pushing you this way. You have to aim that way, and you're essentially going to be swimming into the tide, but it's going to be pushing you in that same direction. So, it's creating an understanding in your mind of how those tides work, and then also being aware of it while you're swimming and adjusting as you need to.
So John, it never has to be the adjustment that was having to be made at Boston, right? Where you would look where you need to swim and then swim 90 degrees to the right or left to compensate for the for the current.
Yeah, Boston. If anyone on this call did Boston, that was a fun one. That was a ripping current, and you had to just swim into it and try to slowly inch your way that way. And
so many people pulled from that.
Damn it,
That was
that
fun.
one isn't getting any closer. What is going on?
Yeah, Marcus remembers that one for sure. That was the swim where we thought it was going to take the fastest people 19, 20 minutes, and it took them 40, 45 minutes. So we won't have any of that at Casco Bay, but the tides are an issue, and it's understanding that if it's right at the turn of the tide, you kind of have a big rush, and then you kind of get closer from, say, if the tide's coming in, you get closer to high tide, it slacks, and then you don't have to overcompensate as much. But it's the idea too, again, if you look at those buoys, that's your tell, right? If you're swimming, and again, seriously, you can't swim in Casco Bay more than 100 yards without running into a lobster buoy. So you will be able to find something out there that's going to tell you which direction that current is going and how you need to adjust. And also, if you're swimming towards something and you realize that it's getting further and further away from you that way, that should be a pretty good sign that you need to adjust where you're going.
Or just double down on how hard you're going.
Yeah. Or tug on the tether of the guy that's pulling you and say, hey, come on, get it right.
Great segue, John.
Yeah.
There's a great question here from Lori, wants to know how the team aspect or the team concept works. And I guess we could field that one. Great question there. So there's a few different categories. So there's the solo category, which is you just doing it. You do you're on your own there. And then how we enjoy to participate in swim run is as a team. So you're actually tied together with a tether, which is 3 meters or somewhere around 10 feet. And you run and you swim together. As a team. So that's pretty much it. There's a little bit of more kind of advanced tactics or things that you can do there. So, you know, usually if who's leading the swims, the person kind of drafting off the back has a significant kind of energy savings. So that's one sort of team tactic that the stronger swimmer can go on. Chris and I we will alternate on some of these bigger swims that we'll switch in between. And then kind of similar on the runs. If there is someone that is a little bit of a stronger runner, they can take the lead and kind of pull the pace along with the tether. Or if you want to just run side by side, like how you run with your friends on the trails or at the track, you could totally do that too. And we've done both, and both are a great way to experience the sport.
Yeah, I think there's a rationale for that. I think which the original Atala Island to Island, they basically made people tie together for safety.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big one because they didn't want them to be more than 10 meters apart. And that's really the reason for the tether. And same thing for having a teammate, because some of these places are pretty remote. So having someone with you in case there's problems, I think is important. Ooh, I see Marcus just put a note telling us to talk about this. Thanks, buddy. So that's one of the reasons. But we have a couple episodes of the podcast where we talk specifically about sort of partner stuff.
February, we did all of our episodes were partner related.
Yeah, so there's one you can search about swim, run, flow, which I think really starts talking about why what's really cool about it. And then really early on, which we're kind of embarrassed to even tell people to listen to these super old shows, but we have one on partners, specifically like how to find a partner, how it works, where good resources, how do you have a happy partnership. That's way back there. So
a great place to find a partner too is in those Facebook groups that Aaron mentioned. If you're doing Casco and you're coming from triathlon or adventure racing and you want to do it, but you got to find someone. I think just going in there and just dropping that you're on the hunt for a partner is a great way to look. And it's less about, hey, can Chris run a 9-minute mile and I can run a 9-minute mile, or can he swim this pace and can I swim that pace? It's more of how you're going to get along, because you are going to be out there for, several hours. So you want to make sure you're with somebody that you can tolerate as well.
Yeah.
Well, and just to address with us, the tethers are not mandatory, but it's mandatory. You have to carry one on you as a team. One of the members has to carry a tether. We do that, and you guys know this, but to those listening, we require that even though you don't have to be tethered together, because weather can kick up, whether that's in the morning or during the event. If visibility is impaired, waves get a little too big enough where they're a concern, but not too big that you can't swim in them. We may tell you gotta be tethered together. We also outlined, and it's on our frequently asked questions page, about minors. That's another thing. If you're a minor, you have to be on a team with an adult, preferably your parent or guardian, and a minor does have to be tethered for every swim as well. So that's kind of some clarity on the tether there. So let's see what other questions we got here. Just course markings. The markings in the trees, and we have barricade tape that marks the way on the run course, and that'll lead you right down to the water where you get in the water. And from there, you're going to be able to either see in the distance somewhere, you're going to be able to spot a big, huge, hot pink teardrop flag. If you can't see it, Austin's a good example of not being able to see those because you swim parallel to shore. As you go around, you're just parallel swimming until you see it. You'll see it eventually. Other things we use at the swim exit are big orange traffic cones. And last year we had some strobes in Austin in various places. So, and there's volunteers there usually to check you out in the water as well.
And just follow everyone else.
I don't know. In Austin, there were a couple of people that went way off and just kind of cut the run to the next swim. Don't follow those guys. But Brent brought up the fact, go back to teams real quick. Teams is such a great aspect of the sport. If we could do swims, I know Lars has mentioned before that, or if we could do teams only, we would. The thing about that is that there are people that can't find teammates. There are people that prefer to be alone. And there are people that just want to do a short distance by themselves, get it in there and just see how it is. We want to open it for those people. It opens the sport up to a whole bunch of other people. And that's what we want to do. But if you can do the team event, long course, that's where it's at. You spend more time with that teammate. That camaraderie is there. You're pulling each other through the race. And it's just that encouragement and that bonding along the way. So we definitely recommend that. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
I guess I'll kind of add just a little bit to what you said there, Aaron. Teams for short course are also great. And I can say both at Orcas and at Casco, the two races I've been most involved with, everyone finishing on the short courses is like smiling and happy. And for some reason, everyone crossing the finish line on the Orcas long course kind of like fake punches me before they like give me a high five. So you can just factor that into your decision making.
I thought you were going to say before they really punch you. I wanted to mention, guys, this is we're on about an hour, 20 minutes here, so I want to wrap it up. Feel free to post your questions on the Facebook groups. You can email us. We're certainly going to have more of these meetings. We're going to have meetings solely dedicated to course review, and that'll be all for about an hour. So we'll dig real deep into the courses on that. But I did want to mention we have a couple new programs this year too, if you haven't seen them. The first program is our legacy program. So if you've done 10 events, 15 events, 25 events, anything in between there, we have special bibs that are bright pink, like a hot pink color, and then a neon green and a black bib for the ones that have done 25 and over. So if you do more events, you can work towards those. They're pretty cool. Definitely stand out in the crowd. Everyone will know. And then the other program that we have is the standings. And you can check it out on our website. I won't go over that in great detail, but we'll have a gold, silver, and bronze bib that'll go for teams, male, female, obviously, and also solo. Short and long course, it's just one for the standings. So long course is obviously more points than short. But if you do more short course races, we've figured out ways to kind of keep you in the running there. So just check that out. It's on the website under info. We have the legacy program for those bibs and then the standings as well. So we hope you guys enjoy that, have fun with it, earning those bibs. And that's about all I had. If anyone else has anything else they want to add to it before we sign off here officially.
I'm just going to ask Chris and Chipper to sign off in the way they always sign off the podcast, just to give you a little bit of a taste. But, Aaron, thank you for putting this together. Aaron is definitely the coordinated one of the team of us, meaning every email that you get that you inquire to Odyssey, the reply is from him. He's the customer facing one of the lot of us. We each have our strengths. We each have a lot of weaknesses. But Aaron is definitely drives that the marketing and the customer service and the operations side of things. So Aaron, thanks for putting this together. We hope to have many more. Chipper and Chris, we'll let you guys take it away and have the final word.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, geez. What do we do usually?
I don't know. Well, to be honest, I was recorded once and then we don't even listen
Oh,
to
it's the autoplay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we always say, go out there, go for a
swim.
Go for a swim, and then you just go for a run, and you just keep doing that.
Yeah.
Swim and run and swim and run.
Yeah.
And then when you're done, just like go back to your car and go home.
Yeah.
That's our whole thing.
That's the sport. It's great.
That's what it is. And that's why I like it.
Perfect, guys. Thanks so much. Well, and for those of you that like these guys, how could you not like them? We're going to have them on a number of these meetings that we do. So you'll see more of them, but go check out their website and their podcast and all the stuff they're doing. They're great. And we're super excited to have you guys on this year.
Yeah. Awesome. We really appreciate working with you guys and racing your races and the community for sure. Really appreciate all the support and everything.
Yep.
Odyssey is the best. Sarah, you're right.
We appreciate it. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.